plan how you are going to react to an emergency situation, because emergencies are typically reactive responses. But if you have some preparatory risk communication, risk planning associated with that, you can at least attempt to mitigate some of the risk and the impacts of that risk upon the population, on the environment, on health and safety. So those are the definitions that we're working with today, and I'm going to try to distinguish, or make each one of them individual and not lump them together, because sometimes they're used as interchangeably, but they're really not interchangeable. They have common components, but not necessarily interchangeable. So, today's news this morning, an hour before I came over here, I was reading the newspaper, and here's out in today's paper. Crisis communication. What? The what is under stress. Fear leads to missile scandal. Now, I don't know how many of you have followed this, but the military is experiencing a challenge with their nuclear launch teams at this one particular Air Force base at Malmstrom Air Base up in Montana. This is a by chance occurrence. In a regular drug investigation, they found issues of security lapses, low morale, and burnout among their missile launch officers. And not only did they find burnout, they found cheating, a cheating scandal. Monthly, these folks have to take a proficiency exam to ensure that they are ready, should they need to be, to push the button. And when I say the button, that's in all caps, the button. We all know what the button means, right? So they were cheating. So that's why this resonated with me this morning, because I'm speaking to a group that is being sponsored today by the Nuclear Security. Oxymoron-ish, right here in today's Knoxville News Center. All right? Now, here are the consequences. 95 convicted. That's not too bad out of 550 that they have investigated. But 95 out of the 183, that's right at half of their staff that's being convicted. And guess what? If they're convicted, they're no longer at the ready to push the button. A compromise to national security. All right? Now, what the other impact is 10 to 24 hour shifts that the other 95, or how many, are now having to pull extra duty, extra shifts. I don't know, well, you guys over here as students, you've done those all-nighters. But what if you had to do all-nighters, all-nighters, all-nighters? Wouldn't work too well, right? These folks, at the ready, finger on the button, pushing 10 to 24 hour shifts daily. Nuclear security. It's hard for me to buy into the fact that I'm really going to sleep well tonight, knowing that those folks that are supposed to be at the ready, they may be dozing. All right? Risk communication. This morning's paper. NRC officials to meet with the public February 5th to talk Watts Bar safety lapses. Now, from that headline, you would think, in just reading that headline, that there is an imminent problem at Watts Bar. Does everyone know Watts Bar, where Watts Bar is? Okay. All right. I know with some of the students, not maybe being from this area, you may not be familiar with it. All right. So, what NRC is looking at here is an informational message to get out to the public and to say, okay, public, if this, then that. If there were a dam break, D-A-M, break, okay? We did a study, and if it was to break, the facility at Watts Bar could be flooded, and it could compromise the nuclear security at Watts Bar. What they're telling these folks is, this is not, it's unlikely, their words, unlikely to happen. However, we want you to know so that you can be prepared and make your family emergency plan accordingly. Informational. Preparing people for the risk, should it occur, gives them that opportunity to have their own personal response, which gets into a whole other area of trust and credibility and those sorts of things that I can't even open that door today. We don't have the time either, but that's a whole other segment of this, is the trust and credibility of your message. So, why is crisis communication different? Well, it's unexpected. Nobody expected Atlanta to be in the shape that they're in today, or this past week. It was totally unexpected, even though the National Weather Service had issued a warning. Some folks didn't take that warning seriously. It's like the little boy who cried wolf too often. When the actual wolf came to the village, no one believed, because there had been too many false alarms. There's high stakes for public health issues. We saw just here in Atlanta, again, because it's the most recent, the public health issues. People staying overnight in cars, exposure, potential, hypothermia, children stranded away from their parents, the anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress syndrome issues could develop as a result of that. Lots of issues. Now, for the Institute here, some of the issues associated with nuclear security, of course, would be public health because of the potential for exposure and contamination. Also, the community in which we live, Oak Ridge being a prime example. We're literally on the doorstep of a huge complex that's there. That guess what their products are, folks? It's that nasty stuff that we don't like to talk about. The environment, huge impacts on the environment, on organizations, businesses, schools, government agencies, even the world community. Fukushima had impact on the world community. It had impact on us here in the United States. People on the West Coast downing as many KI pills as they could, potassium iodide pills as they could to protect their thyroid as a preventative means. Well, they got the cart before the horse in this particular incident. But the world community is impacted should something happen in a crisis, especially that deals with nuclear materials. It is urgent. There will be a high level of interest. We had an extremely high level of interest during Fukushima, or at least I know I did. And part of that is because of what I do. I work in national security and emergency management programs, and then also working with REACTS, which, if you're not familiar with REACTS, it's the center in Oak Ridge that treats radiation emergencies, treats persons that are exposed to radiation, I should say. So there's a high level of fear, anxiety, and concern among the public. What is this going to do to me? What will it do to my children? What will it do to my family or my unborn child? What will it do to my crops, my livestock, my pets? Lots of anxiety, lots of concern. And then, of course, we saw in Fukushima, we saw in Haiti, we've seen in lots of these worldwide events, a multinational involvement in response and recovery efforts. So you can assume that if there's a nuclear incident here in the United States, that there will be a multinational involvement as a part of our response and recovery efforts. So, in a crisis decision-making mode, here are things that you need to think about and understand from your perspective as the agency that is communicating during that crisis. These are things that are really top-notch issues that need a lot of attention when you message. And messaging is critical during a crisis. First of all, you need to understand your demographics. You need to understand the people that live in and around that area that are going to be impacted. you need to understand their educational level. And that's important because you can't use what I call those big old 50-cent words for the people that live, that may be in your emergency evacuation zones. You may have to use smaller words. You may use those nickel words. All right? Not those big 50-cent words, but those nickel words. Actually, your messages should be on a 10 to 12-year-old level. Now, that's a challenge in and of itself because nuclear security does not lend itself to nickel words. You don't even like those 50-cent words. You like those big old C-note words, those big old $100 bill words. That's the words that you like. And especially if you're a technically oriented individual, then that's your language of comfort. That's where you want to run and secure yourself. But my friend Wendy here, who works in public relations for our company, she's going to try her best to persuade you to use those nickel words because her role is making sure that your publics understand and recognize and can internalize those words so that they can help protect themselves. All right? Because they're going to cling to their current beliefs. Their belief system, whatever is embedded there already, that is a barrier that you're going to have to look at overcoming. And they're going to weigh that against their previous experiences that they've had. If people in Atlanta now, next time National Weather Service issues a forecast that includes ice and snow, how many empty desks are you going to have at your business? How many empty desks are you going to have at that school system the next day? All right? Because people will remember and they'll go, oh my God, I spent 20 hours on the interstate huddled in my back seat. So that will block or has great potential to block your communication. When I say your communication, you as the messenger and me as the receiver, it has a potential to block my communication as well. And because it's such a high-stress environment, I can only process so much information. Don't tell me everything that you know about the situation. Tell me what I need to know to protect me, my family, my pets, my neighbors, my whatever. All right? Those are decisions that need to be made up front in the planning process as you plan your communication. Crisis communication is a hard science. It involves formulas. It involves mathematics. But most people think it's that soft, slobbery, tear-shedding, cuddly, arms around you, hugging, make me feel good kind of science. No, it's hardcore science. Data is associated with that. Research, tons and tons of research associated with that, with just the crisis aspect of it. And then when we get into the messaging, even more and more research is available. So, here's what your challenges are as a messenger. Because as a receiver, here's what I'm battling. So if I'm battling it, it means you are battling it as well. Because you have to recognize that as you develop your crisis communication plan and your approach to deliver those messages. Fear, anxiety, confusion, dread. Hopelessness or helplessness. I never really understood how you could be hopeless or helpless until Hurricane Katrina. And I saw all those people marooned at either the convention center or the dome, the Superdome. I began to get a little bit of feeling and a lot of empathy for what those people were going through. I had really never experienced that. So hopelessness and helplessness is something that, especially in something that has been imposed upon them, that is not voluntary, as something that's exotic. Nuclear, anything with nuclear, radiation, that's exotic to us everyday folk that are out there sitting in our living room. We don't know what to do with it. It's science. We in America have a science phobia. That's why we're trying to promote more in our school system, STEM, education, focused school systems and curriculum, so that we can try to get people to understand better. When we get our population to understand better, which is generations away, by the way, then our messaging hopefully can become simpler and more direct to those folks, because they will know it in context of the way it should be. They seldom panic. There's a misperception out there of people panic. They don't really panic, except if they're in a closed space and can't get out. We didn't see people really panicking in Atlanta this past week. We saw them either sleep in their car or get out and walk to a Home Depot or a Walgreens or a business office and shelter. But we didn't see floods of people rushing and trampling each other to get out of a situation. Fight or flight. Well, we saw that in Atlanta. Some of them said, I'm fighting. I'm staying in my car. I don't care what happens. This is my car. Somebody will steal it. If I leave it, I'm staying. So I'm going to fight. Others, they flew the coop. They went to Home Depot. They went to the Walgreens. They went to that business office complex or knocked on somebody's door and said, let me in. I'm stuck. And then there's, excuse me, the vicarious rehearsal. Now, what in the world is vicarious rehearsal? And how does that impact the message? Depending on what it is, people they run these scenarios through their mind as to how they're going to cope with different situations. And sometimes they make themselves such a superhero. They morph themselves into, that big S across the chest or Power Ranger or whatever. They're invincible. And so in being invincible, or in their mind being invincible, they neglect to hear and be able to internalize your message. To give you an example, 2 weeks after 9/11, I was on an airplane. I was on my way to Florida, and I had been upgraded to first class. So I was on the front row, first seat, first class. I'm thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do if something happens? This is my first flight after 9/11. What am I going to do? I had already gone through my head. I knew exactly what I was going to do. You want to know what oh, it's a great story. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to morph. I'm going to morph. I've seen too many bad movies, okay? So, my first option was to grab a wine bottle. I was going to break it across something. I was going to cut somebody. If they came with a gun or a knife, I'm cutting somebody. Then I'm tackling them, pinning them down. The flight attendants are coming forth, and the other passengers are going to help. That's, exactly. Like I said, I'd seen too many. I grew up in the old black and white Western days where in a bar fight they hit the bottle across the bar, and that was my context of how I could morph. I was going not as much as morphing into a Superman, but that old cowboy hero of mine, Roy Rogers and Dale Evans and Trigger and all those folks. Those were the images that I saw on that plane. Me just a swashbuckler there. So that blocked my ability to internalize any message that the pilot might have been given at that point in time, because guess what? The plane was delayed because there were 2 men acting suspicious, and I would say if there were one, there were about 15 police that came on board that plane that morning. So I was really in overdrive. And for you that don't know me, I'm in overdrive on a normal day. Okay? Now, being hyped up and not even on any kind of juice. They give you free liquor in first class. I hadn't even juiced yet. But I was ready. Okay. So here's what the public needs. And here's why it's important for you to understand what they need. They want facts. And those facts come from you. Now, those facts really have to be on that level, that nickel level, that I can understand and internalize. They want to be empowered in the decision making. Now, I'm a little leery about using the word empowered because people take that the wrong way. Empowerment to a lot of people means I'm in charge of myself and I'll do whatever I want to, whenever I want to, however I want to. That's not what this is about. Being empowered in a crisis, in a decision-making mode, means that you have the information that is the most current information available so that you can internalize it and make your decision based on what's good for you and your family, but based also on facts. So you're empowered in the decision-making aspect from your perspective and how it impacts you. You're not empowered to make the decision for that organization that may have impacted you. All right? So there is a difference in the word empowered. So if I'm empowered, then I am involved. And if I'm involved, I'm thinking, what can I do to help myself and my family? And I'm not getting in your way as an organization. I'm staying to the side so that you can proceed doing what you need to do, however you need to do it. But I'm also wanting to know how you're going to help me. What are the resources that are being allocated to help me and my family? And then, how do I get back to normal? Now, normal is a subjective term. Normal to you may be home in your lazy boy with your remote control and a cold beer. Normal to some other folks may be cuddling up on a sofa with a blanket and a good book. All right? So normal is a subjective term, but people want to get back to where they can resume their activities in their safety zone or in their safety net. Now, as you plan your messaging, here's what you got to think about. Your messages really revolve around 3 buckets. Three key questions. Now, that's not all the questions that are going to be asked during emergency, but these are 3 big buckets if you want to put your questions in and organize yourself for your crisis communication. First is the occurrence. What happened? You've got to tell people what happened. And let them know. You've got to be upfront and honest about what happened. If it's ugly, it's ugly. You've got to know it. You've got to tell them. Second, what is the impact? What is the impact on the individuals, the community, livestock, crops, pets? What's the impact? And then thirdly, what actions are being taken? Now this is in that crisis mode. What's being taken? Now, if you look at this as a triangle, a gentleman by the name of Michael Sheehan uses this as a basis for his crisis communication training, and he worked with the Clinton White House. So, long story short, I lifted it from his material, okay, attribution. All right? I wish I was smart enough to have come up with this on my own, but I didn't. I borrowed it, and I will, if anyone has anything I can borrow, I'll be glad to take that at the end of the day, okay? Now, this triangle is going to morph, depending upon where you are in the emergency. On the front end, the information is going to be all about the occurrence because you are preparing them now to look at the impact and the actions that are going to follow. As the occurrence or the what happened kind of subsides, then that triangle is going to morph. Let's call it I think it's an isosceles. You technical folks that know math. Isosceles triangle where one axis is longer than the other. All right, the impact. It's going to morph. That's going to be, here's what it's going to do to you, your family, your kids, your community. Then later on, it's going to morph yet again because here are the actions that are taken to counter the impact of the occurrence, and that's what we're communicating. So that's the crisis message response triangle. Now, with that, you need to understand that it's imperative that you communicate during crisis. You've got to communicate, at least answer those questions for those 3 buckets. Ancient Chinese symbol contains 2 symbols. One is for danger and one is for opportunity. So, oxymoronish. How are danger and opportunity linked? Well, from my perspective, if you don't communicate in a crisis, organizationally, you are in big danger because you knew about something, you didn't tell the public, it impacted their health and safety. You are, if you will, liable. You are the culprit, and I, the generic I am the victim. Who's the public going to side with, the culprit or the victim? You're going to lose the public relations battle, in other words. Because the victim, more than likely, will win this battle. All right? The other for opportunity. In a crisis, you have an opportunity to get that message out to help protect this health and safety, the environment, the pets, the livestock, the crops, those sorts of things, your community. You have that. But if you don't take that opportunity, then that danger quotient rises significantly. So, I'm a strong supporter of using that opportunity to help, not quell, but to help manage the danger and the messaging emanating from that event that has potential to impact that community. So let's look at those dangers. Well, of course, the crisis in and of itself is a danger. And all the attributes that come with that crisis. Then, here's the big one. Here's the big one. Rumor, gossip, speculation, assumptions, inference. That's your PR nightmare right there. That's your communication messaging nightmare. Because if you don't get a grip on that component alone, there's where the danger really lies. So you have an opportunity and an obligation to negate that. A little factoid here. A rumor that's repeated 3 times ceases to be a rumor and becomes a fact. It becomes that urban legend. It becomes institutionalized. You can't afford to let rumor, especially something dealing with nuclear security, become institutionalized, because no matter what you say, if it becomes institutionalized, now you're going to have to spend all your valuable and limited communication resources trying to run that sucker down. And guess what? Your message that's really important and maybe life-saving or life-protecting doesn't get out, because 95% of your communication resources are running that rumor and trying to quell misinformation. Because these folks have limited access to facts. Their facts, especially if it deals with nuclear security, or if you're from just an industrial setting or a business setting, the public has limited facts about what you do and how you do it. The facts, and I'm going to use air quotes, the facts are coming from, 9 times out of 10, the media. And even worse now, tweets, Facebook, Instagram, pick a social media. That's what you are having to deal with right now. So, when I saw Anderson Cooper reporting from Japan about Fukushima and trying to define millisieverts, I got a little uneasy. The best I remember, I dated millisieverts in high school. Now, how the hell did she get to Japan? I want to know. I may want to go visit her now. So I'm getting my facts from Anderson Cooper. I am now really scared. I am really scared. All right? That's why that's where the danger comes in if you fail to communicate in a crisis. You let somebody else tell your story rather than you tell your story. I will contend you want to be the storyteller here. All right? Heightened public emotions. That speaks for itself. It's going to be high. Now, here's what you have to overcome. It's a barrier that I didn't list there, but it is an implied barrier, is that because of the heightened emotions, my ears are going to close. They're going to close. I'm too emotional, and I can't internalize that information. So you have to recognize that during an emotional setting, that it's going to be twice as difficult for you to get that message through. Work a call line, work a phone center during an emergency. 2 summers ago, I just happened to be in Colorado, and I worked the Colorado Springs fire. And people would call in. I was on the phone, and people were calling in. What about my house? I've got horses. I've got livestock. Can you tell me anything? Well, can you tell me what part of the city you live in? Yes, it's so and so and so and so. I said, well, I remember this one call. I said, well, at this point in time, what we do know is that that particular area of the city has not impacted. Damn it! Tell me if my house is burnt. I said, ma'am, What we know right now is that area has not been impacted. Well, I can tell right now I'm not going to get anything from you. I'll just call somebody else. We appreciate your call, and if you need additional information, please feel free to call us. I was not going to win that battle. But my point being is, and it's in a book called The Power of Communication, is that when people, and it's the neuroscience of how the mind reacts when emotions are part of that communication process. Those emotions strip things out of the message, and people hear what they want to hear or don't hear anything at all because they're so emotional they don't get internalized. And then it's an unstable information environment. Need I say more? It's pretty unstable. And what is always good to caveat in your message, what we know now, or at this point in time. Because if you paint yourself into a corner, the governor of Georgia did that. Yes, with national weather. They didn't tell us. Well, guess what CNN do to keep them honest? Well, we went back and we pulled the National Weather Service's advisories. And guess what? Atlanta was square dab in the middle of that advisory. Governor, get your facts straight. In fact, that's pretty much what Anderson said. Guess who I got my information from last night? Anderson Cooper. He's an oracle, you know. What can I say? I depend on him to deliver the honest truth. I hear laughter. No one else thinks Anderson is the paragon of truth. And
I would believe anything Anderson.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you for coming to the rescue. All right.
I used to watch him at 2:30 in the morning.
So here are the communication barriers that you face. Mixed messages from multiple experts. Here again, let me just say Atlanta. That's all we need to say. We had the National Weather Service, we had the Weather Channel, we have CNN, we have everybody out there saying something different. Pointing fingers. They said this. All right? Information that's released late. Well, we can't claim that here with Atlanta because we had a 12-hour heads up. We knew it was coming. We did take heed. And the reason we didn't take heed is this bullet right here, number 3. That's one of the biggest dangers that we have in communication. The paternalistic attitudes. It's expected that the government will take care of me and my needs during a crisis. So I don't have to do anything. I'll sit in my car on the side of the highway tonight. Somebody in a DOT truck will come by and scoop me up and take me somewhere. Guess what? Didn't happen. The Superdome, the convention center in New Orleans. There was no knight on the white horse sweeping in to rescue those people. They thought their government, city, state, federal, would come in, and that would be it. They would be safe. Guess what? They didn't. Opportunity to inform the public about what they need to do to help protect themselves. Because I can't do it. As an agency, as a government, I can't protect you. I can help, I can furnish you with a few tools, but you can't really depend on me to furnish you with a few tools because they may be limited. I may not be able to get those tools to you. For instance, the Center for Disease Control, they have a stockpile of supplies, medical supplies, that they can deploy should the state run out of those kind of supplies. Well, guess what? That's a 24-hour minimum cycle before they can ever get them to you. So by the time that's just getting them out of their inventory to the area where it's going to go. Then guess what, folks? There's a whole process that you don't even want to know about that has to take place before I can even take them off the plane, warehouse them, and get them distributed to the area of need. So we're looking at 48 hours best. But what I suggest, based on some facts and research that I found in my dissertation, dealing with schools and sheltering, Atlanta and Birmingham yesterday and the day before, you need to be prepared for anywhere from 48 to 96 hours to be self-sustainable. Paternalistic attitude. Let people know that they need to be prepared for 48 to 96 hours without your assistance as an organization. Not counting rumors, we've already talked about that. Rumors repeated 3 times becomes an urban legend. Public power struggles. Governor Atlanta, the emergency management, they even got in a conflict the day before on a news conference. Emergency management said, oh, it's going well, there's no gridlock, and the governor got up there and said, hey, I was in gridlock. It took me forever to get here. So, who do I believe here? GEMA, Georgia Emergency Management Agency, or the governor? At this point, given their credentials, their history, neither one of them really make me want to sleep well tonight. All right, so let's look at your opportunity in your messaging. Public-centered educational campaigns. If you need a model, your local health departments are a really good model to follow. If you want a bigger national model, Center for Disease Control is hard to beat. They've got it covered. They've got every fact sheet that you'd ever want to know about any disease, any preventable anything, any epidemic, any whatever, in 96 languages. But guess what? Those things still happen. People still seek information. So, if you need models, as you're developing your crisis communication plans and your risk communication plans, CDC is a good model to utilize. You've got to recognize the type of information that's needed. Everyone doesn't need to know everything about every little increment. They need to know, and this is where you have to step back. Really, you have to present your message at that 30,000-foot level. All right? Not down here on that 100-foot level where you're in the mix. Because if you're in the mix, it's hard for you to see from that 30,000-foot level what impacts are occurring. There was an analogy that I read or used where a gentleman talks about being on the dance floor versus the balcony. If I'm on the balcony, I can see patterns on the dance floor, how couples are moving across that dance floor in a pattern so they don't collide. But if I'm one of those couples on that dance floor, I don't see that pattern. I'll say, oh, excuse me, I stepped on their foot. Then I go this way, I step on somebody else's foot. I don't know which direction to go. All right? So being on that balcony or that 30,000-foot level rather than on that dance floor is critical as you decide what type of information that you're going to deliver. You need to have several categories of information. There's some immediate response information that's got to get out. You should have that right now. Right now, if something were to happen from whatever organization that you are representing, you should know 95% of the questions that would be asked by the media and by the public. So if you know 95% of the questions, then that means you can formulate 95% of your answers, ready for immediate release, already approved, ready to release. Not they're sitting there, and we'll get to them when we get to them. 12 years ago, CDC ran into that with a anthrax scare. They didn't have their messages, no messages approved, and they were having to use their approvers to write messages, and no one to approve them before they went out. So there was a logjam. So guess what happened? People went to other places other than CDC. CDC is an opportunity, but also CDC can be a danger because their approval process and not being proactive in their message development created a logjam that forced people to other information sources. All right? Now, and then there's precautionary emergency response information. This is that preparatory kind of information that can be delivered in those public-centered campaigns as you move forward. So, knowing the barriers, knowing what's lurking in front of you, what are your goals? Well, your goal is to decrease the impact on the population and the community in which you live. Decrease death, injury, concern, anxiety, those sorts of things. You and your organization may assist with the response and recovery aspect of whatever the incident happened to be. It may be in an advisory capacity, but I would think the Institute could provide technical information to experts. You could draw upon your connections, networking with the labs, with folks at Y12 or NRC or wherever, other governments, the Japanese government. You know, those linkages are there. And those where your support comes from other agencies that can help you as you develop your messaging. You want to maximize those resources. Your role here again is maybe to advise decision makers, and yet again, those rumors and innuendo, you notice they've appeared 3 times. Does that indicate to you that there's a significant importance in rumor and misinformation aspects of crisis or emergency communication? So here's what success looks like. You have a plan. You know what that plan is going to, what it says and what it's supposed to do. Now here's the problem with plans. They're that thick. Nobody in their right mind is going to read a plan that's that thick. You got to have a plan that is executable. And a document in a 3-inch notebook is not executable. That's not even good nighttime reading. I don't care how bad of an insomniac you are. That's not good reading. All right? So, execute that plan. Make that plan simple and focused. Last semester, my students, they're instead of a final, comprehensive final, their role was to write a crisis communication plan for an organization and event of their choice. Pretty exhaustive plans, actually, given that they'd never done that before. And I said, this is not to be a novel. Well, how long is it supposed to be? How many pages do you want, right? Right till you cover the subject matter. I do not want words, lots and lots and lots of words, lots and lots and lots of pages. Almost to a person, 8 pages. Very comprehensive plans, very simple, bulletized. Don't give me paragraphs, I don't have time to read paragraphs and such. Give me bullets in an emergency plan. Okay? I want to decrease the impact, death, illness, impact on the community. I want to make sure that I have allocated the appropriate resources to the appropriate place at the appropriate time. I want, 4th time, reduce rumors and innuendo. So, here's what your message should look like, right? Got it? FYI, thanks a lot. That's what a crisis communication message should look like. Or that's the way some of us approach our crisis communication messaging. But in reality, here's what your message is. It's a simple message. It's 140 characters or less. It's a tweet. I am a pioneer. But I didn't realize I was a pioneer until Twitter came out, 4 or 5 years ago. In my work with Dr. Vincent Cavello for the past 20 years, I've been teaching tweeting and didn't know I was a tweet teacher. That really didn't come out the way I meant it. All right? Anyway, you get where I'm going. You know where I'm going. Because what we were teaching was a message mapping protocol. And that message mapping protocol says that you communicate in 27 words or less. 27 words or less. Main ideas. Big umbrella picture on how you communicate. And I didn't realize that, but 27 words is pretty close to a tweet. So, I consider myself a pioneer. They have to be timely. 2 days later, 3 days later, when I needed to shelter in place or needed to have evacuated and I didn't know it, I'm not going to win that PR battle either. They need to be active. You need to give me relevant information. Don't give me all that stuff. Give me information that I need to know. That's why it's important for you to understand your audience, know the demographics. Somewhere in your state, someone has gathered information about the demographics in every county in Tennessee, in Nashville. They use that. They pull it for economic development to try to lure people, businesses here to the state to be manufacturers or build manufacturing facilities or relocate or whatever. We know the education level. So if we know the education level for relocating business and industry, Why can't we use that same kind of information to help us develop our messaging for things that are going to impact the health and safety of our residents? A good use of information that you don't even have to go gather. All you have to know is how to push a button or two on that computer and access those files from the state. Credible. You need to be credible. Your organization needs to be credible. That in and of itself is a whole topic that I can spend hours upon. But let me say this. Credibility is the key. And whomever is writing and delivering those messages need to take into consideration that, that credibility is going to weigh heavily on whether or not I, as a listener, am able to internalize and know what that information is about and how to apply it to my life. There's a logo, the mantra at CDC is be first, be right, be credible. Be first. You tell your story. Make sure it's accurate. And make sure you're credible. That's their mantra that I teach when I'm teaching some of their classes there. And then make it consistent. The biggest issue in messaging is that people say the same thing different ways. It connotes different meanings to you as the listener. And if it connotes different meanings, if I have 3 experts, those, the previous slide we talked about multiple experts delivering different types of information. If I'm delivering 3 different types of messaging to the public, as the public, how do I know which one to believe? I don't. So what I tend to do is I reject them and I go find my own message. Danger. The danger is if I go seek my own message, it may be the wrong message for the wrong time, for the wrong place, and may actually steer me into the wind, as it were, rather than away from the wind. So that's the danger. So you have the obligation to take that opportunity to craft that message for the public. So, let's talk about implications for the Institute for Nuclear Security here. For those of you that are not familiar with them, go to their website and see what they're all about. 5 pillars: policy, law, and diplomacy. Education, training, science, technology, operations, and intelligence capabilities, real-world missions. My idea about these pillars is to develop a multifaceted communication strategy for each of those pillars. Because some of your publics are interested in some of those pillars. They may not be interested in all of them, but the ones that they are interested in, you need to have a communication strategy that can clearly articulate those pillars, or that information contained in those pillars, to us, just regular folk that are out there. All right? So, that's a suggestion. I sound like my grandma used to have a saying, you've quit preaching and gone to meddling. I sound like I'm meddling, all right? But it's a suggestion. Or as the kids would say, just saying. Multifaceted approach here. All right? So let's dig in just a little bit further with some objectives from the INS website here. Ensure use is not for illicit or malicious purposes. I'm not going to read all this to you because you can read them, but here's what I want to say about this. It's the basis right now, based on those objectives and those pillars, you have the basis right now for great messages. These are core messages right now. All you got to do, I don't know what malicious means. That's a 50-cent word, okay? You got to polish it up a little bit. I don't know what illicit is either. So polish these words. But you have excellent messages already, the core of them. You just have to smooth them out, polish them a little bit, and tweet them, make them talking points, post them on your website, send them out to the media. Great for interviews. If you're going to be interviewed, Howard, by one of the local news stations, great opportunity for you to get that message about the Institute for Nuclear Security. Until I was asked to speak at this lecture today, I had no idea you even existed. I'd say there are a lot of folks out there that don't know that you exist that would have an interest. So, great talking points to get their interest and get them coming to your website, inquiring about what you do, how you do it. Maybe I can help you. Maybe I have some expertise that you hadn't thought about. So, as you're developing those messages and your communication strategies, you need to look at it from three aspects. You need to look at it as pre-event. That is risk communication, preparatory. The risk, should something occur in the nuclear arena, what you as the public need to know. So let's have some messaging along that area. Let's have some crisis messaging develop. I'm in the moment, oh my God, what'd I do? Kind of message. And in the post-event, it's a combination of risk and crisis messaging. Because there's still some risk associated that people need to be prepared for, like long-term. Because there are going to be questions. What's the long-term effects of radiation exposure, illness, death? You know the questions. You know the questions, form your answers. All right? So you have both of them. And then even though it's post, the crisis is still relevant, still new, so you're still crisis communicating at the same time. So you're going down the same almost a parallel path simultaneously. All right, you look at your media. All the different kinds of media, social media, print, electronic. You build all those. All those like different formats. So you can develop those tweets already, have them in the database, ready to go. You can develop questions and answers for the print media. You can develop other electronic messages. Bless you. Public education. Great time to start getting people to follow the Institute through Twitter, through Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram. Great. People are using that now. What I understand is that since the old folks have hijacked Facebook, the young folks are going to Instagram. Just wait, guys. You can't run away from it. You can try. Guess what? It ain't happening. We're going to be right on your tail. Because when we find out that you're moving to Instagram, I'm going to go check that out. Those kids are onto something. So I'm going to probably take over Instagram. You're going to have to find another avenue, and I'm going to follow you there as well. All right? So, public education. Using the media that your demographics in this area or whatever area needs to use to get information about you. Partners. Who are your partners? Are they local, national, international? Are they governments? Are they agencies? Who are your partners? And what are you going? And how those partners? What do they contribute to you and to the organization? Now you remember the message triangle previously on crisis. This is the one message triangle that deals with risk. The risk. Why the audience should be concerned about the issue. We're preparing them, okay? Then, what's the issue? And then, how or what do you want your listeners to think or do? You have an opportunity to formulate or to form or mold how your audience might respond if you are proactive enough to take those steps to do that. The danger is we're going to rely on that crisis communication model that I showed earlier to get us out of this logjam. When we could and should be right here at this point in time. So, let's talk just for a moment about you personally as being interviewed by the local media. SACO. This is what we teach at CDC. Single overriding communication objective. What's your key message? What do you want the public to know? All right? This is a model that we teach all those interns that come through CDC and are going to be working out in the field somewhere in the community. Because if you're CDC and you're in their community, you're a pretty big deal. Because CDC just doesn't come and hang out. You know, they're there for a purpose. So you've got to be prepared to speak to the press. Typically, this column here, this is a reporter asking questions. They ask a question, you answer the question, they ask another question based on your answer. Based on your answer, they ask another question, so on and so forth. All right?
They keep asking the same question, get an answer they want.
There you go. But you have, Kathy, an opportunity to bridge to the message that you want to deliver. You see politicians do it every day. Except for Representative Grimm the other day threatened to break a reporter and throw him over the balcony the night of the State of the Union. He did not use the Sacco principle. And I got to thinking, I need to contact this dude. I can really help him. And I've got a career, a new career path may be looming in front of me if I could just get to Representative Grimm. All right? Because his bridging was not quite as effective as it should have been. I don't know if any of you have seen that, if you're news junkies like I am, but Google Representative Grimm, G-R-I-M-M, and the State of the Union. It occurred right after the State of the Union the other night. And he's a former Marine and former FBI, so he had the credentials to break somebody. You know? He looked like he's in pretty good shape to me. And that little scrawny reporter was the victim. Guess what? Who's the victim here? Who's the public on the side of now? Grimm lost his opportunity. And now he had to come back, and finally he came back and apologized. All right? But it sounded half-hearted and not as sincere. But they're going to have dinner. Don't leave your plate and go to the bathroom, dude. He might put something on your baked potato. I wouldn't go to the bathroom. All right? So, back to this. The reporter asked a question. Your answer bridges to the points that you want to make. More than likely, in about 95% of the cases, that reporter will take that answer and ask you a question based on your answer, your information. And then ask another question, you give another answer. That way you have a way to mold that story. You are telling your story, not the reporter. I'm going to show you an example of how that did not work. I'm going to come back to that later because I want to give you two recommended readings for those of you that might be interested. The first one, effective crisis communication, moving from crisis to opportunity. That's the text book that I used this past semester in teaching crisis communication. It's by Rob Over, Tim Selnow, and Matt Siegel. They are known throughout the risk communication world. In fact, anyone from communication department here today? The communication staff over there should know them because they're well published and they may have even done some cooperative work together, I'm not sure. But it's a SAGE publication. So, which means that if you're faculty and you're going to use that as a textbook, that you can review that textbook free for those of you that haven't experienced SAGE before. The second one, I'm a disciple. I am a disciple of this guy right here. I came across him by chance. A lady that works with us sent me a link on something else, and to the side they had like YouTube clips. And I thought, I'm going to look at what the neuroscience behind crisis communication. I clicked on it, and an hour and 45 minutes later, I was still watching. He is very good. He sums, if you don't want to buy the book, if you can invest in an hour and 45 minutes on YouTube, it's well worth the watch. It's well worth the watch. But it goes hand in hand with the other crisis book that I was using. If I teach this coming fall, I'm not sure that I'm going to or not, this may be my textbook because I thought it was so powerful. I really couldn't put it down. I even took it, I found it this summer, I even took it to the pool and read between swimming laps. I read that book. Now that's desperation, folks. Yeah. That's interest. That's interest. I could not put that book down. I guess that makes me a geek. Kind of, sort of. You know, it happens. So, if you're interested in some additional information, I'll be glad to share it with you. This is my contact information. And I'll be glad, you can contact me by email or phone. I'll be glad to answer any of your questions should you have some. And I'm going to close this out for a moment, and then I'm going to show you how a risk communication opportunity turned into a crisis just into a crisis. This happened in San Diego. It deals with Homeland Security, weapons of mass destruction. This is a Customs and Border Patrol, CBP official, being interviewed by a local news channel about the 30,000-foot view of safety of San Diego ports. That's what the story started out as. All right? I'm laying the background. That's where it started. I'd like you to, I'm going to stop this as we go along, because I'm still on time. I'm going to stop this as we go along, just to make a comment or two, but show you how the opportunity to communicate evolved into danger, rather than the opposite, using that opposite, the danger for opportunity. They use the opportunity in a reverse fashion.
10 minutes of non-stop news starts now.
So specifically, you're looking for the dirty bomb. You're looking for a nuclear device.
Correct. Weapons of mass effect.
You ever found one?
Tonight, the stunning response.
You ever found one? Oh, God, I've got to watch this one. I've got to watch this report. That's called a grabber. All right? That news station is wanting you to listen to their news broadcast about safety of the ports in San Diego. I'm hooked now. I got to watch. I got to watch.
Serious questions about the safety of San Diegans.
And while 10 News reporter Mitch Blocker was working on a story on San Diego port security, the subject turned to weapons of mass destruction.
And the answers may leave you speechless.
I'm just warning you, okay? You're going to sit here and say, really? Did he say that?
340 cargo ships coasted into San Diego, all potentially a hiding place.
Given the open access from the waterways and the Navy fleet being here, I'd say that absolutely San Diego's a target.
San Diego's Assistant Port Director Al Haller showed us the...
Absolutely, San Diego's a target. You're kidding me. That's how you're going to end the answer to that question? San Diego has potential to be a target. However, because we at the Border Patrol work daily to ensure the safety of this harbor as well as the residents of San Diego and the United States of America. Boom. That's your end story. But he stopped. Yeah, we're in danger, folks. Wave a flag here. Big target sign. Come get us. Can you believe that answer? What's scary? This guy was, I think, trained. Media trained.
The radiation monitors used to find nuclear devices. But when we started asking questions, we were surprised by what he said. So specifically, you're looking for the dirty bomb. You're looking for a nuclear device.
Correct. Weapons of mass effect.
You ever found one?
Not at this.
Really? Again, really. I can't, there are no words. Yeah, we're looking for weapons of mass effect. But in addition to that, we're also looking for blah, 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 because as Customs and Border, our job is to protect San Diego, the United States of America, blah, blah, blah. Bridging. The Saco. Another word I'll make up. He is Saco-less. Saco-less in this interview.
But they have found them.
Yes. Well,
Off camera.
So where, pray tell, would you have found them? You know that's going to be the next question. Guess what? Here it comes.
The public affairs officer interrupted. Okay. Okay. You never found one in San Diego, though?
I would say at the port of San Diego we have not.
Have you found one in San Diego?
Did you see that? Do you see how he just, that facial expression? What you need to know is that your body will betray you in a communication setting. And what I'm going to read first and foremost is your body language, your visual appearance. I'm going to read that first, and that's going to color your message. Your body language in a crisis or in a risk situation will set the tone for your message. So he doesn't want to answer this question. He's like, don't want to go there.
I see. Trying to.
Again, we'll just talk about the Port of San Diego. I'll follow up later.
Besides being San Diego's assistant port director, Haller is...
Let me think. Not going to go there.
also a Customs and Border Protection officer.
Do you ever find things that are dangerous? I mean, like a chemical agent or weaponized device?
At the airport seaport, at our port of entry, we have not this past fiscal year, but our partner agencies have caught items like that.
We asked which agency, what type of weapons, when and where.
I can sleep better knowing that it's not this fiscal year. Now, 98% of the viewing public, when they heard the word fiscal, they heard the word physical. As in education, activity, physical. Not fiscal, meaning being good stewardship of one's finances. So how does that cloud the story here? He's using words that are not common, the common vernacular for the everyday public. So this fiscal year, so what fiscal year did you find? Is going to be my next question.
Discovery made.
Partner agencies have.
Okay. Now you've thrown your partner agencies under the bus, so you know what he's going to do. This reporter is going to go to your partner agencies and say, this dude at Customs and Borders said that you're a part of their partnership, so what do you have to say about this? Do you think that they're going to respond to this? Let's see.
We were promised a response later. It came 23 days after this interview in a carefully worded statement saying Customs and Border Protection has not specifically had any incidents with nuclear devices.
3 days later. Now, how much trust are you going to have in that message that's 27 days later? Or 23 days later. It's taken them 23 days to craft a message for a television station? They should have had an immediate response. But because, for those of you that have not worked in the government, and I'm facing this table right here because you guys are still in school and probably haven't had that opportunity. Or maybe you have had that opportunity. Could I say red tape? Could I say approval process? Could I say bureaucracy? Give me some other words, Kathy. We live it. And we're so used to it. All right? 23 days.
A carefully worded statement. Or nuclear materials at our ports of entry. Once again, this was the original question for Al Haller.
You ever found one?
Not at this location.
But they have found them.
Yes.
Haller confirmed weapons of mass effect were found in the past year, but not in the port. This was reinforced by another brief conversation.
Do you ever find anything on ships like this?
In terms of radiation sources?
In terms of anything dangerous to the country?
We have not found anything at this location.
Are you kidding me? He goes back. In terms of radiation sources, he needs to run away from that. He's giving, the reporter's trying to give this guy an out here. Have you found anything else? Like any kind of weaponized something? Or did you find creepy crawlers that shouldn't be here? Did you find what? Chemicals? Stowaways? Something. No. He said, radiation?
In terms of anything dangerous to the country?
We have not found anything at this location.
Now, just this evening, a spokeswoman from the Department of Homeland Security called us to make it very clear that nuclear weapons have not been found anywhere in the United States. As for other devices, dirty bombs or chemical weapons, we simply don't know. They wouldn't answer questions about those types of weapons and won't tell us which partner agency Al Haller was talking about.
Okay. Why won't they tell them? All they have to do is say, we cannot divulge that information because it is a matter of national security. And I'll give you an answer that a general gave me in a training that I was conducting. I asked him, I said, General, are there any nuclear weapons at your base? And he said, you know, this was way before 9/11. You know, you asked an interesting question. And if I were to answer that question for you, I would also be answering for those that might not be as friendly to our government as you are. All right? Great, great answer. And I've never forgotten that answer. National security in Oak Ridge. There are things that if something were to go wrong there, I work in the Joint Information Center as an advisor to the spokesperson. Go figure. All right? And one of the things that we will counsel them to do is not to say no comment, but to say it is either business sensitive or classified, and we can't answer that because it does have national security implications. But what we can tell you is that we have processes and procedures in place that are designed to protect the health and safety of the residents of this area. That's what I can tell you. All right? I just don't leave it with no comment.
Mitch, it seems like Howard was just trying to be honest with his answers. The unedited video really clearly shows that. So how does Homeland Security explain this?
Simply put, they suggested he was just nervous in the interview, that he misspoke. So we have let our audience decide. We've put part of the raw interview on our website, 10news.com.
You never, ever want to be in a situation where you let your audience interpret your comments. That is a danger. You need to take that opportunity and define those terms, those words, those messages. Don't let me imply, with my lack of knowledge in the subject matter area, what that message should mean or could mean. You need to clearly articulate that message. So, are there any questions? Comments?
Well, I have one. Coming back to your comment about Katrina and Fukushima and now Atlanta and so forth, we seem to revisit this inability to communicate in a crisis over and over. How do we get better?
We have to take time, devote resources, when I say resources, people and time and money, to anticipating and answering those questions. So that in the throes of this emergency, we're not caught without answers. But we can't seem to do that because money, time, and people are in short supply. And we really don't devote. And in every communication setting, regardless of what it's been around an emergency, there are always those things that we never seem to have learned from because our intentions are good. We say we're going to do better next time, and then the next time comes, and it's a repeat of the previous. So we've never really gotten it. It does take time, effort, and devotion, and commitment on the part of an organization, an agency, a government, to sit down and devote the resources necessary to be proactive in their communication response. Yes, sir.
What happens when there isn't a good answer? When there is an answer that will not, that you basically can't give the reporter that's not going to somehow, in some way, induce some kind of shock, or when basically the truth is scary.
You have to tell the truth, regardless of what that truth is.
Sure.
But you need to be judicious in the words that you use to compile that message. You need to use words that are not off-putting, or you may warn them. What I'm about to say has potential to upset you or a number of people. Now I want you to, when I deliver this message, I want you to try to recognize and understand the context in which it's being delivered. It's being delivered in order to help you and your family or your agency or your government prepare for what is about to happen. Here's what we, from past experience and from what we know evolving right now, is happening. You have to tell the truth. But you can use words that are not what I call red words, those neon flashing light words, to help describe whatever it is that you're needing to describe. Sometimes the truth is ugly, but sometimes ugly has to be dealt with.
Well, even after you told the truth, you have the SOCO bridging opportunity again.
You always have that SOCO. So my SOCO to that is, here's what we are doing, or what we have done, in order to help mitigate, or mitigate's 50-cent word, let me step back. In order to ease this problem that we're about to face. Here's what we've done. 1, 2, 3. Simple things that we've done.
Hey, Ron.
Yes.
Just to add on to that, who you choose to speak, it makes a big deal too.
The selection of the spokesperson, thank you, Laura, is and that in itself is another hour and a half lecture that I don't think you're prepared to sit through. I'm prepared to deliver, but you're not prepared to sit through. But yes, the spokesperson selection is critical. They have to be perceived as honest, trustworthy, and credible. And there are characteristics that are associated with that will help that person demonstrate that criteria to their listening or viewing audience. Yes, sir.
Thanks for coming, by the way. I really enjoyed this. When you're talking about, like, giving concise messages, you're 140 words or less, how do you, mitigate's the best word, but how do you control, in some regards, like the dissemination of disinformation to other media outlets? So some guy who's writing a news report, he gets a message from the CDC that says a concise, good message, but he has to write 500 words on it. How do you control him from going to his experts or his own, just because in some regards, newspapers have to sell newspapers, media have to get ratings, so therefore they sensationalize things.
What I would do, let's use a tweet as an example. I embed a hashtag that links them to my website or to a press release, a full-blown press release, or other resource information that they can readily access to help them write their story. That includes contact information, a point of contact, and any other relevant information that they may need.
That's as well as you can, and then say it is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've made the effort, and it's up to them to pick up the ball and try to do the right thing by that.
All right, so let's thank our speaker again.